not thinking what you think I'm thinking. I'm keeping them. Yet at the same time, I do wonder how these got here. I left them back in Florida, yet they travel away by themselves. Still, I'm done. Same fur texture. Same alligator clips. I'm there. At least it gets me ready for Season 7. Welcome home, sir.
Standing in the middle of nowhere, wondering how to begin. Lost between tomorrow and yesterday, between now and then. Back where you started, here we go round again. Back where you started, come on, do it again, do it again, do it again. Back where we started, here we go round again. Day after day I get up and I say, do it again, do it again. Do it again. Day after day I get up and I say, come on, do it again, do it again, do it again,
This doesn't make any flippin' sense. I got rid of you a couple of episodes ago. How can you be here? Well, what is light without dark? What are you without me? You can never defeat me. We are brothers. Eternal. You're just saying that because that speech from Legend was cool. Acquittedly so. And poignant too. Wait a minute, we should be connecting. We're enemies! Oh, now I do implore. I could be of some good help to you. Last season you tried to mess with my timeline and, above all, threatened to eliminate my friends. How can I trust you? Well, this is a new season. A new year. Besides, if Digit could turn around, maybe I could so. After all, just a matter of trust, really. Well, since you put it that way, I guess I could give you some form of leeway. Heck, I'll let you pick today's movie. Spawn. Crap!
In the early 1990s, a bunch of illustrators were frustrated with some of Marvel Comics' work-for-hire policies and formed Image Comics to expand on their talents independently. One of these founders was Todd McFarlane, who created a cult anti-hero Spawn. Upon first issue, McFarlane's creation became a massive hit, selling 1.7 million copies. Since then, Spawn has been still popular with comic book readers for its unique narrative and dark yet fun edge. It has led to countless spin-offs, video games, a successful toy line, an animated HBO series with a low cult following, and as one would expect, a feature film adaptation.
And as someone who loves to go behind the scenes, one would think that Todd McFarlane was completely shut off from any kind of work with production, when in actuality he was given creative input and merchandising rights, and was actually okay with the movie being PG-13 as long as it retained its dark nature. So, I can't really fault the film for that. If the original intent was to make it commercially accessible for all audiences, it did the job well. I remember seeing this at the age of 8 and enjoying it. But now that I'm older, some things have not held up well. Before we begin, I'd like to address that the version of Spawn that will be examined is the R-rated director's cut. As stated prior, the original intent was to make this PG-13, but nobody told them how anal the MPAA would be about rating a movie in which a man goes to hell.
I sure as hell can't tell you we learned about hell unless I say hell, can I?
The lad has a point.
Hell yes.
Bart!
As expected, edits have been made in order to obtain a PG-13. and in terms of what the director's cut restores, you're not missing too much. Dare I say it, there is no need to compare and contrast seeing what got trimmed down were bits of violence, and a couple of innuendos spoken from the clown character.
And hopping, and parking, and doing it, and liking it. All right, kids, I got more tricks than your local hooker. I'll grow up, you syphilitic ball sack. What does it remind you of, huh? Well, the evil's been there ever since you were soup in your mama's crotch. Have you ever ridden a clown's big pony? But I think it's about time.
And yet Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey survived with a PG rating. Life can be interesting sometimes. The plot involves Al Simmons, an assassin for hire. No. He's not an assassin for hire like in the comics? Alright.
The movie has Al as a special forces agent who is sent out to do special missions. Even if he does these missions, he starts to question the nature of Superior Jason Wynn, played by Martin Sheen.
You will follow orders and do your job. Got a problem with that, soldier?
Yes, I do, sir. And I want out.
You don't quit us, son. We are not the U.S. Postal Service.
Is it just me, or is he channeling his character from Project Alf? On the other hand, Colonel Milfoil wouldn't have an ashtray full of scorpions. It is best to address Al Simmons as played by martial artist Michael J. White. His acting here is half and half. He seems a bit stiff in the beginning, but later on when he becomes Spawn, he gets a little better. I don't place my blame on him seeing he betrayed Mike Tyson in the 1995 HBO TV movie without flaw. I do question if there is a direction flaw seeing Michael has a blast when he performs the action scenes, but I won't be too hard seeing he was the first African-American actor to portray a big-screen superhero.
Oh, my bad. The first African-American to portray a comic book superhero. Apparently some people tend to forget Meteor Man and Blank Man were original properties. And in a weird twist of irony, this movie was released right before Steel. So maybe it's for the best that Spawn had the historical cinematic spotlight before Shaq did.
That's an insult!
Anyway, Al is sent to infiltrate a biochemical weapons plant in North Korea, but discovers it was a trap by Wynn as his partner Chapel. Wait a minute!
That's not Chapel! Who's this piece of fan service? What? Jessica Priest. Jessica Priest? Chapel. What do you mean they couldn't get the rights to Chapel because he was part of the Youngblood series and made by a different creator? We'll get back to this later, I promise.
So, not Chapel shoots Al under order because he knows too much of Wynn's plan. I question why Wynn is there to see him die, as it would make more sense for Priest to kill him, but I didn't write the script.
In the comics, Simmons and Chapel were sent to a mission in Botswana with Chapel under orders to murder Al by Wynn. And once Al gets resurrected, the whole thing was to be unraveled like a big mystery so he can figure out his bosses behind the whole thing. I know I should treat this like its own adaptation, but there's just some things that don't add up here. But those are the least of its major faults.
So Al gets roasted in brutal fashion. Again, props to Michael for enduring the fire. And wakes up 5 years later looking like
Freddy Krueger face fucking topographical map of Utah.
I was gonna say Freddy Krueger after a bad comedic roast, but that will do.
Okay, even though things are slightly changed around, I can respect the film's faithfulness here. Much like in the comic, Al lives with homeless folk near a church, he loses a good bulk of his memory, and his only guardian is a demonic force known as Clown, played by John Leguizamo.
Just think of me as your guardian angel. The clown from hell. You're Jimmy Stewart, and I'm Clarence. Every time somebody farts, a demon catches her wings. Oops, twins.
First off, I love the makeup work. And while disfigured Al looks more like
An avocado had sex with an older, more disgusting avocado. Yeah, not gently, like it was hate fuck.
enough! As I was saying, despite the fact that it looks like other burn victim makeups I've seen in other previous movies, I'm gonna let that slide because I can only imagine how difficult it is to work under pounds of makeup like that. Especially when you got some physical stunt work to do.
Second, the real reason to see this movie is for Leguizamo as Clown. While I do prefer the HBO series for its devil-on-the-shoulder feel, I give a claim to Leguizamo because of how much he has to do under so much detail. I swear, if you put these two side by side, would you even know Luigi was channeling Beetlejuice? Aside from the heavy fat suit, Leguizamo had to do a lot of squatting in order to give the little guy feel. Visual look aside, this version of Clown makes a never-ending list of sex jokes and gross gags. To some, this might be grating, but I don't mind it. Some of it adds to the nastiness of the character that existed in other incarnations. But then there are times where it can get distracting. Take this scene where Al visits his own grave to understand he is dead.
Oh, come on, you scream like a girl. Do it like this.
Wait a minute. Did the movie just self-riff itself? On top of that, you have an emotional moment that could work. In the animated series, this scene acts as a metaphorical fight for identity, which is very effective. Here, the timing is right, but the emotion is just not there. I think I know why.
You see, when Al died in the comics, he made a deal with Malebolgia, one of Hell's rulers, to see his wife Wanda again in exchange for his soul. The fine print in the contract was that Al was under Malebolgia's will to lead an army against Heaven. The center of the whole series was Al wanting to see his wife again, but learns that she moved on. To us, we see Wanda really does miss Al and wants to know how he died. In the movie, we get a Cliff Notes version that tosses emotion right out the window. We don't see Al and Wanda share a scene together before Al dies, so the relationship feels kind of lacking. And that one flashback we briefly glimpse doesn't count, as we are only treated to a small snippet. If we saw a bit more of Al and Wanda before the big roasting, maybe it could have added an emotional core to the story. One of the big elements is that Wanda has a child after marrying Al's best friend Terry. This is meant to hit Al hard in all interpretations because Al wanted to give his wife a child, but it's hinted that he is sterile. And while I do argue they get the basics right, it doesn't feel fully developed or goes further with the ideas. Take Clive Barker's Nightbreed in comparison. We get treated to seeing Boone and Laurie together before Boone transfers over to the group of monsters. It anchors the movie together as we question if such a relationship can exist beyond death. I feel like they were trying to do the same thing with Spawn, but it doesn't hit close to home when most of the time we see Teresa Randall's Wanda pal around with Al's best friend Terry, played here by D.B. Sweeney.
Yeah,
Buy your man a watch.
he's on his way out. Now do me a favor.
What's that?
Make sure he's back for dinner tomorrow night.
I'll do my best.
Make sure he's back for dinner tomorrow night, Terry.
Yes, ma'am.
Interestingly enough, Terry in the comics is black, while in the movie he's portrayed by a white guy. This is a change I'm actually okay with. Besides, biracial couples were hard to find back then in the 1990s.
And Nicole Williamson as Cagliostro is kind of cool, for the amount of screen time he is given. He has an interesting backstory, but they don't go too far with it. He acts more as the conscience of Al, who guides him to be more of a hero and seek less vengeance in life. However, the movie sidelines his importance in the last half of the feature as, well, a brief mentor. But back to the changes that don't work for me. Remember Jessica Priest? No offense to actress Melinda Clarke, but her character feels a bit fan-servicey to me. Priest takes over Chapel's role as the one who kills Al and has turned him into Spawn. Outside of that, Priest just mostly spends time wearing a leather-based wardrobe or just appearing dressed to kill. She doesn't even put up much of a fight when Al goes in to kill Wynn.
I've heard of a chastity belt, but that thing's kind of cool. I should also bring up originally she was going to come back later in the movie as a she-Spawn. Unfortunately, they dropped the idea for budgetary reasons and used the idea for the comics by retconning the comic by having her be Spawn's killer. I don't know how to feel about that, honestly.
Speaking of which, the special effects are a bit of a mixed bag. Sometimes they're good, and sometimes not so much. For something that uses the tagline, the special effects movie event of the year, it falls so short. I already gave praise on the makeup work, and when Spawn comes fully alive, it's in the action scenes. To see some good old-fashioned stunt work feels like a breath of fresh air compared to today's CGI fests. I'm aware there is a danger to performing these feats like an 18-wheeler driving through a fence, but that is what marvels me the most, is how far and beyond the cast and crew puts themselves on the line. But when it comes to the CGI, I can't say they have aged well.
Hello, Cyan. Remember me?
When the clown turns into his demonic form, named the Violator, it's kinda cool. At best there is weight to the creature and kept in the darkness. Plus they cut to an animatronic on set, so they know the limits. The animated cape I can live with because there's no other way I can think of how you can achieve such an effect, unless you had a cloth moving in a water tank, but that would be equally challenging to match the scene. But it's the depiction of hell that gets a major strike for me. In the comics, Al rarely went to hell, and when we did view it, it was very inconsistent. There were 8 different variations, while the main ground would be home to souls trying to hide from other demons. In the movie's depiction...
If you need my army, you can see Wanda again. If you fail me, you will die. Avenge your murder. Kill Jason Wynn.
Do I even need to say anything?
And the cherry on this poor pixelated world is Malebolgia. Points for getting Frank Welker, but minus $1 million for the effect. I know computer graphics were in the infancy stage, but if you can make the Violator look good, and yet this... not... you had this thing on the cover of Cinefex, a magazine that covers visual effects in movies, and of all the choices to showcase on the front cover, they went with that?
I know I shouldn't freak out over a bad special effect, but the bewilderment doesn't stop there!
I thought this was an extremely interesting movie.
Really?
It was directed by Mark DePay, the man who created the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park.
Like those better.
And what he does here with his visions of hell, which you didn't even mention, are truly worthy of a medieval artist or Hieronymus Bosch. The visions of what hell looks like in this movie are things we've never seen before on screen. And that dragon-like character, the kind of overgrown gecko, as they call him, who was the beast of hell, that's a wonderful animated and special effects creation.
The Gnome King in Return to Oz was a far more unique special effect than what we are seeing right here. Oh, and the juicy bit of marinated irony is that he is in this movie!
And you're comparing the visual style to Bosch? Well, good luck.
But the biggest headache for me has to be the main conflict. Wynn gets a device surgically placed inside of him that would launch a biochemical bomb and destroy the world. Malebolgia sees this as an opportunity to prove Al's evil, seeing Wynn killed him. If Al kills Wynn, Al ends up destroying the world.
Where do I begin? I can be on board with a part of this. But the thing that really annoys me is how Wynn's pacemaker is connected to a giant Armageddon. I can buy the fact that he has a little tiny bomb in his chest. I can. But if it were me writing this thing, I would have just scaled it back. Because on one hand, the climax is all set during Wanda's house. So at least it would make the teetering intensity a bit more personal with Spawn's character. Because if he goes out, everyone in the whole house goes out. But now we have to deal with the threat of the world? Really? That's just absurd! It's overkill! It's too much! It's ridiculous! The idea that a tiny little pacemaker is connected to a bunch of global nukes! I just...
are Minuteman missiles.
Like a test, sort of. Like a warning?
They take about 30 minutes to reach their target.
Gotcha! But do you see how ridiculous that would have been?
Oh, and the criminal mastermind behind this whole stupidity was... the clown?
Don't blame the clown, Husk! Oh, it's easy to point the finger at the clown! Oh, yes!
Actually, Clown's manipulation was more thought out in the comics and the HBO animated series. He wants to get Al to unlock his dark side, while also proving to his boss he can lead the army Malebolgia created. But Malebolgia doesn't want a demon to run the army, and instead wants a Hellspawn to do it. So instead of tempting Al, Clown makes a deal with Wynn to see he gets his Boston Cream Voodoo Mambo and dance with it too. Of all the things they cut down from the source, I'm surprised they didn't touch upon this.
It just doesn't add up. Getting Al to kill Wynn? Fine. Getting Al to cause hell on Earth? That's just too much.
And the final climax is something to be desired. Originally, the final confrontation was to take place at Wanda's home, with the house turning into a version of hell. However, the idea was dropped to save an entire week of production, and instead resorted to everyone filming Michael J. White and Nicole Williamson wrestling a Violator animatronic on a green screen with obvious CGI dummies added in.
This hurts me. I understand things have to be delivered on a certain time frame, but if you can't have a big fight scene in hell, just scale back. Why not have the climax in the house? Or perhaps in the neighborhood? Would that have been a little too close to, say, the T-Rex roaming around in San Diego in the end of Lost World Jurassic Park? Bottom line, the story should come first. As cool as your special effects are, your story must have a sufficient beginning, middle, and end, or otherwise you're just going to lose your audience engagement.
Still, I will give credit for the Sam Burke and Twitch cameos near the end. Shame, seeing how much of an impact they were to the original source, and maybe they could have been of good use here. Unfortunately, when you're adapting a story so complex and full of detail, it's best to use elements from the original source that held it together, instead of cutting out the crucial spots. In this case, they really done goofed here.
And while Spawn wasn't a major flop, it wasn't a colossal hit either. At an estimated production budget of $45 million, it managed to gross $87 million worldwide. Even when you compare it to the other movies of its time, it didn't even manage to crack top 10. While I do recommend checking out the HBO series, which is easily the better route, the big question still remains. Should you see this movie? And my answer is... yes. What? Yeah. I mean, yeah. I actually recommend seeing Spawn.
Okay, it may sound like I've been coming down on this movie, but I don't believe Spawn is that horrible. There are good things here and there, but there is also some stuff that bogs it down. The characterization is there, the look and tone is there, the right kind of action is there. Sort of. The biggest weak point is the movie's story. You can change and alter characters' purposes to service the plot, but they need to matter to a story that will work for the adaptation. Or else, what viewers will end up with is a messy storyline that doesn't connect well. Aside from that, Spawn is a personal guilty pleasure of mine that is watchable at best. Michael J. White's performance is fine, John Leguizamo's clown nearly steals the whole show, and it boasts some good action. When you compare it to the other comic book movies that came out in the same year, it stands out. In a good way. For them to make a superhero comic film about heaven and hell while making it commercially pleasing to many is not an easy task. But sometimes it's best to take the risk and let it find the audience, as opposed to playing it safe and letting it be viewed as a curiosity of the time period.
In a way, I compare this one more to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise. It's still an ongoing thing with many different variations that range from good to bad, but it always depends on which one you want to look into. This was not supposed to end this way. That movie was supposed to send you into a fiery rage. Joke's on you, I made a New Year's resolution to downplay that whole angry critic motif. Besides, how do you be so lethal after you return my fox ears? Fox ears? I didn't return those. And if you didn't do it, who did? Oh, it doesn't matter. Because that question is gonna go silently by the time I... Huh. That was weird. You saved me. But why? Huh? Uh-huh. Really? Oh. Huh. Why? Thanks, I appreciate it. I never thought a fan of... On the other hand, I never knew I had fans like these at all. It was you that returned my ears. It's very kind of you. I don't know what to say. These really do mean quite a lot. Do you travel often? Oh. Well, if you want to, I can let you stay around here. It's for one of your size, you're really adaptable, I guess. Probably don't eat much or anything. Do you have a name out of curiosity? That's been unfortunate. What if I called you Judy? Would you like that? Oh, no, not as in Zootopia. I was thinking more along the lines of one of my favorite authors, Judy Blume. Whoa! Okay, easy. I'll let you stay. You know, Judy, I think this is the start of a good friendship.
Violator 1, Spotty Boy 0.